God bless. This is NFL-Moneyball. We're in Week 15 of the NFL season. Today is Monday, December the 8th. The Monday night game just wrapped up, and I am your host, Mark Anthony DeBello. For more information on this program, you can go to the NFL-ESP.com website. And for more information on myself, you can go to my website at markanthonydebello.com, and again, may click on the Sports tab to find out more information on this program and, more importantly and most importantly, the NFL ESP system. That's NFL Extended Strategic Principles. I would sometimes say expert, however that word seems to be a little bit self-serving and used a lot in mainstream media, which I don't quite understand, since, no disrespect, I appreciate that many played in the NFL and they are on television and the announcers have media experience. I give them all the respect and credit in the world for that. However, their level of prognostication or prediction or philosophy or psychology of the game, I think we are a little bit different in our mindsets and thoughts, and thankfully, thank God above, that ours here at NFL ESP have been very accurate throughout the course of the season, and especially in the last couple of weeks. So, continuing with the previous week's programming, we're going to keep this show to a half an hour, and with the second half of that, the final 15 minutes, be more focused on those who invest in the games and even those who participate in fantasy football. But again, the first 15 minutes, I'm going to discuss some social commentary on a couple of things. We're going to talk about a little college football and some accuracies in those prognostications and predictions and thoughts that I've had, and then a little bit of the NFL ESP system, and some other just things going on in the pro football world this week, Week 15, and then again we'll get to covering last week's predictions and some of the playoff standings and information about that before getting into the investment side of things. So to begin, I mentioned the media. Especially a network like ESPN, I sometimes see the commercials, which I know are the fuel for the car that drives the, television motor, if you will. Advertising, pays for broadcast television, and I was critical of some commercial ads last week, but I would like to compliment ESPN, who is sort of the premier sports network, obviously, in the world, for some of the promo spots they run. Their commercials have always been great, the ones to promote their network. I especially like the New Jersey Devil. He's in the elevator, and the person doesn't want to go on because he asks him where he's going, and he points down. So God bless that one. And I especially now like the new series that they have where they're promoting Monday Night Football using older songs, I guess probably because the rights are made available. I think from my production experience, it's after 30 years, I think, but they, they use sort of, older songs. Like this week, it was Green Bay against Atlanta, and they used Roll Out the Barrel, and then showed some slow motion highlights. And now I even saw an NBA commercial for Rubber Band Man was the song, and they timed, the highlights reel with the lyrics of the song. So very, very clever programming by ESPN. But regrettably, I'm not on the network, which I just don't understand. I've tried the last couple of years at the MIT Sports Analytics Conference, having blessed to been credentialed there, and it's a very ESPN-oriented and sponsored event. Met John Clayton, Susie Colbert, who I went to school with and class with at the U, and a lot of fine folks, but for some reason, I don't know. I don't believe it's accuracy, and I don't believe it's NFL ESP's ability philosophically, psychologically, prophetically. I think that might be the problem, but not that I'm not prophetic, but that maybe they don't appreciate the spiritual side of analyzing a game. And then again, the predictive and the prognostications, and most of all, what the NFL ESP system is all about is the production. And we've advertised, and it's noted, and the data has shown over the last 12 to 15 years that NFL ESP data and the system will improve a team's win-loss production by 10 to 15%. And in the NFL, that's typically between 1.6 and 2.4 games a year, which is quite substantial for teams, on the cusp of the playoffs, or teams trying to avert a winless record. It'd be much better to go 2-14, or teams who are, going for a perfect season, who are, 14-0 and want to be 16-0. So, I'm sorry, 14-2 and want to be 16-0. So, anyway, having said that, again, that's what the NFL ESP system is all about, and it works throughout all the leagues. If you went to the website, all the pro leagues, including college sports like football, basketball, even not so much college baseball, but all the four major pro sports, and we've even now added the NFL ESP related product called PGA ESP, or Professional Golfers Association Extended Strategic Principles, which are designed to help golfers improve their tournament wins and stroke production and scoring production, every tournament. So just very valuable data based on the four categories that you've heard me mention here before. We look at the spiritual, the motivational, the X's and O's, which is the play design and other certain design type of things. And then the power spread, which is sort of the hallmark of the program, which is a number, as I've described before, and I'll go over it again briefly now. It's the number derived from a very accurate formula, a very exclusive formula, to determine what numerically, statistically, how much better a team is than another team. Typically, like in the NFL, it would be points. The same, baseball would be runs, hockey would be goals, and obviously basketball would be points as well. And then in PGA, it would be strokes. But how much better one team is than another statistically, and then that way you can be aggressive if you're the underdog and try to overcome that power spread. And again, without giving too much detail, the power spread is the accurate number based on the formula, before the number that's posted in newspapers and across the world by entities in Las Vegas who call it a different number, but actually manipulate and alter the number so that those who would invest in it lose. So again, if you're coaching, you want to have the most accurate power spread, not the number that's just disseminated throughout and distributed throughout the nation via media, but you want the accurate number, the one before the number that everybody, invests or wagers into. Again, designed to lose, and that number is, not necessarily the most accurate power spread, but that's the one you need to use strategically to improve your win production. So, anyway, having said that, and can always talk about that at length, but let me talk a little bit about an X's and O's from pro football this weekend, and I saw actually Cincinnati do and this is just a brief note as much to myself and somebody like Coach Trestman, who's a genius when it comes to play design, but I saw Cincinnati run a trick play where they only had 3 offensive linemen. Now, when you run a trick play like that, which I think is a great call, especially if you're an underdog and, you want to be aggressive and, create points or manufacture points, the key to any trick play is you have to make sure it's not so complicated that it doesn't not fool a defense, if that makes any sense. So, again, if you have a trick play and a formation, you want to make sure that the defense is fooled. So then when you run your trick play, then the deception works. But what happened in that play was that they were playing Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh didn't have time to adjust to the trick, wasn't really fooled, didn't get into a set that would have led to the deception succeeding or the execution of it, and they were just sort of dumbfounded and stayed in the same place that they would have normally, attacked the formation from, and didn't offset themselves. And in a sense, they were just, God loves the dumb, if you will, but that they didn't adjust enough, and when the duplicity came from the Bengals, it was ineffective. The play didn't work. They had to just do a little bit more, be a little more patient, or give Pittsburgh time to adjust, so that the deception could really sink in to the mind of the Steeler defense and the coordinator who called their, and the linebacker who called their defensive player or defensive audible. So, again, well-meaning, but with any trick play, it's almost like conning somebody, you know what I mean? You have to have a setup, and they have to buy into the setup before you can pull off the con. And Cincinnati failed to do that. But then again, in every virtual aspect I've seen of Cincinnati this year, they failed, and that's why they're not, as we projected from the beginning of the year, not going to make the playoffs. We projected at the beginning of the year, and I don't want to get into all the playoff scenario now, but I will momentarily because, again, we projected Baltimore and Cleveland and some other teams to be up there. Pittsburgh is surprising, but not Cincinnati. So speaking of playoffs, let me talk a little bit about the college football playoffs. And if you wanted to find more information on and up-to-date on thoughts, that I'm blessed to share, you can always go to my Twitter or Facebook account. Just go to the markanthonydebello.com website, and you can click on the links. But my Twitter's been very accurate, and I've been, trying to assess this college situation and at each stage, predict the philosophical thoughts and the psychological and even spiritual thoughts of the selection committee and what goes on with the results of the games. Again, prophetically and from a predictive sense, but quickly, it was obvious to me that it would, Oregon and Florida State would be on the board. Once they had put TCU into the mix, I knew that was ultimately going to be a setup against TCU, and I don't mean setup like it was a immoral type of thing that was done, but I knew that, with the conflict between them playing Baylor and Baylor defeating them, I just felt that, with Oregon, Alabama, and FSU being in there, that TCU would somehow find their way out, especially if Ohio State had the convincing victory that they did. And I heard a sports announcer after I posted this 3 or 4 days ago, or whenever those games were going on Saturday, that Ohio State is a bigger quote-unquote brand, that a school like TCU, Texas Christian, isn't going to be as well received as a branded university like Baylor, because honestly, from my perspective, I felt that Ohio State. I felt that Baylor should have been in the mix, but once they had elevated TCU over Baylor, that kind of negated them both. It's almost like a political, election. You take votes from the other person, and then the third team, slides in. But again, not surprising that they ultimately went with Ohio State. And again, I already predicted who I thought was going to win the national title. I think Oregon's going to win it against FSU, and then Alabama and Ohio State finish out of it. So, but again, I would take Marcus Mariota. Not that a team is a quarterback. Quarterback college is almost, I don't want to say it's like the pros in that it's quarterback driven, but those are probably, definitely I think the top player in college football, and he'll win the Heisman. He's a clear favorite in Marcus Mariota. And I think Jameis Winston, as noted here, is overrated, and I don't think is going to make a very valuable or, he's going to be an overrated pro. But in college football, they're obviously the two best teams. But even like pro football, even though a game or, a team is, it seems like the league is quarterback driven, it's a team game. The quarterback is just 9% of the players on that team. His offensive side. He's one of 11 players. Yes, he does factor in for the most production when it comes to points, anywhere from 0 to 9 on the pro level. College a little bit more. But either way, it's not worth overrating quarterback. But anyway, like I said, I just see Oregon win it. So Oregon going to beat Florida State. So as we approach the halfway mark, I want to make a final comment about when I mentioned quarterbacks. We've been before we get into the investment side of things last week and this week and the playoffs, is that been very accurate with what's going on with Johnny Manziel and this Brian Hoyer competition that they're having in Cleveland. Been noting this all year long. Was really blessed and fortunate to speak to a radio network. Want to give a shout out to the Fan there in Cleveland, who had me on air last week and then again this week, and the hosts there and the producers. And what I had noted was that last week, if Indianapolis in the Indianapolis game, if Manziel had played, they would have beaten Indy, and if Hoyer played, he was going to underperform and they would lose to Indy, and that's just the way it came out. And again, no disrespect to Brian Hoyer or the Browns. I actually like Coach Pettin. I think Brian Hoyer. I wish I was Brian Hoyer in a sense. Okay, he's a pro quarterback. They're all great athletes and great players, but relatively speaking, Johnny Manziel will be more productive in the long run. Up to 9 points, 8 or 9 points, as highly ranked as Aaron Rodgers is to his team. I think at some point, I think Johnny Manziel will do that for the Browns, just as I think Marcus Mariota would do that for the Jets if the Jets can continue to keep losing and then draft him. But typically that's those are the highest-ranking quarterbacks in the NFL, a 9-point quarterback, and Aaron Rodgers certainly ranks there, as I think he's probably the top quarterback in the NFL. And that was evidenced last year when he went out, and now he's back, and look how great Green Bay is. And again, we project them, you've heard last week, to lose the Super Bowl to New England, but to definitely be the best team in the NFC, if not Seattle, and just depending on the home field. And Seattle was our preseason pick. But again, I'm going to get into all of that here in a minute. So, but again, not surprised, and noted this on the show that Cleveland went with Hoyer. He underperformed. The offense underperformed. They were +2 in turnovers, and they still couldn't win that game. And tragically, and I noted again, you're going to see it again this week with Cincinnati. Cleveland is, I think, a better team than Cincinnati, and all things being equal, should beat Cincinnati. But if Hoyer's in there, I would give basically probably 60-40% chance of Cleveland winning. But if Manziel's in there, I would upgrade that to probably 75% chance of Cleveland winning, and maybe even 55-80, okay, percentage-wise. But Manziel is going to, I believe, and had said it since week 4, prove out to be that much better of a quarterback. So, and better for the Cleveland offense and Cleveland team as a whole. So, God bless. We've got about 12 minutes left in the program. That's about all I want to say about the Manziel and Hoyer quarterback situation. Let's go over last week. Speaking of the games, I already talked a little bit about the Cleveland-Indy game. Let me go back to and how we did on our prognostications. Bears-Cowboys. I can't talk enough about this game. From the NFL ESP perspective, in that I thought the Bears would keep it close. Coach, I love him. I'd been trying to get him to do productive things like kick onside kicks and go for 2-point conversions. They kicked 3 onside kicks, went for a 2-point conversion, and did about 3 or 4 of 11 things on the NFL ESP system as a way to manufacture points based on lots of factors and turnovers and whatnot during the game, but almost made a most incredible comeback when they finally did follow the NFL ESP program or system and won that game. And even though Jay Cutler threw his predictive interception, they could have overcome that. And again, it wasn't all Jay's fault. An interception, and know this from an NFL ESP perspective, is never just one player's fault. It's a team turnover, okay? It could be the receiver, it could be the quarterback, could be, line protection, could be just a better defense, could be anything. So again, the quarterback gets too much blame and he gets too much credit, okay? He's part of a team. But again, when your offense is predicted, I should put it that way, to throw an interception, and as I told Coach, and I'll mention it here, although I never, usually share, anything personal for ministerial reasons, Jay, God bless him, Cutler has a risk addiction problem as I see it. Brett Favre had the same thing. When you're, and let me give you the parallel to the Brett Favre story, and then with 10 minutes left, we'll have time to go over the investment data. Brett Favre, when he gave up prescription medication and then had his Iron Man, consecutive game quarterback streak, his drug, if you will, his high, his weakness, his gunslinger mentality kicked in, and that was where he got his thrill, sort of, was to throw risky passes in certain situations, and there's some insecurity deep-seated in there, lots of things. But because he had no other real addictions, he let that out on the field, and he tended to throw more interceptions during that time, in a ratio, even though he played an incredible amount of consecutive games because he got off the drugs, which we would always espouse. But, he threw more interceptions. The same thing sort of with Jay Cutler. I don't know Jay personally, but I tend to believe that he's drug-free. He doesn't drink. He's not an addict in any other way. He's a very wholesome, healthy, human being and lives a good, strong, solid life. But again, in that case, his high would be throwing a risky pass now and then and his gunslinger-type addiction. And it was predictable on that play, in that situation. I was ready to tweet it out just as I accurately predicted his interception the week before that he was going to throw one, and he did. But it was a great coaching job by Coach Trestman. A lot of people get on Coach Trestman and think he's to blame for the Bears being whatever they are, 5-9. But let me tell you this, from an NFL ESP perspective, if Coach Trestman wasn't the coach, they would probably be 3-11, okay? Or whatever their record would be, 2 less wins, 5-8, I guess they are, so they would be what, 3-10. So Coach Trestman is not the problem. Is he being as productive as he can be? God bless, I love my brother, but no, he's not, nor is the team, and there's a myriad of reasons for that. But anyway, so again, with last week, thought the Bears could keep that game close. They almost did and almost covered, for the word that everybody uses with regards to investing, but they didn't. So Sunday, and I altered a lot of these from the show on Monday because I was able to study after. So if it sounds like this program is a little bit different than week 14, please know I'm not going to lie and take my tongue and twist it. I'm going to tell you exactly what I altered, some of the things that we did, and you can hear it even in the program last week of some of the teams we went with. But ultimately went to Baltimore over Miami, although the spread looked like it could make Miami a team to play. So with that game I thought was a game not to play, we went with Baltimore and hit that. Pittsburgh over Cincinnati, mentioned that. Cincinnati didn't get the home calls we thought they would get or feared they would get, so we had picked Pittsburgh, the better team, and Pittsburgh ended up winning. Indy and Cleveland, just as we had thought. The turnovers kept Indy from covering, but again, was spot on, right on that game. Houston and Jacksonville missed on this one, to be honest. Thought Jacksonville could cover because the public was investing in Houston. We would have played Jacksonville if you had to twist our arm and play. But again, that game was too bad. Not two bad teams, but you really don't want to invest in a team like Jacksonville if you don't have to. The Giants played Tennessee, two bad teams. Thought Tennessee would actually surprise and cover that one and upset the quote-unquote public who was investing in the Giants. But the Giants won that one. And again, Beckham is turning out to be a really great receiver there. But again, the Giants are an overrated and/or a bad team. Not Coach Coughlin's fault, and we mentioned the changes that we thought needed to be made there. Actually, when I first spoke about the Carolina-New Orleans game, wholeheartedly believed Carolina could cover, and they did, but actually altered that to Carolina being the upset winner. We knew that if those pump blocks from Minnesota didn't occur, that they would have beaten Minnesota. And again, we had projected 2 or 3 weeks ago that Carolina is going to win that division based on that half-game tie that they had with Cincinnati early in the season. That would be enough for them to win the division, and we're back to that prognostication. It was, and they'll be a surprise team in the playoffs to upset somebody in the first round. Their record is bad basically because they have the toughest schedule in the league. Detroit went through the number with Tampa. We kind of projected that, although for a minute we thought Detroit would keep it close. The Rams went and beat the Redskins as everybody thought they would, and the public, like I said, they get to pick one game correctly, and that was the one we all got. Jets and Vikings came out almost the way we projected, the Vikings winning, the Jets covering, and that game really should have been a Jets cover, but neither here nor there. It was too close to invest in. We're pretty spot on that. Buffalo, we thought would keep close to Denver and cover but not win, and they did that. Arizona and Cleveland was a 50-50 game, but once you knew the whole public was investing in Kansas City, we moved more toward Arizona, was right on that one, although still that's a 50-50 game. The biggest loser probably we had all week was San Francisco against Oakland. I thought San Francisco, based on this system that I had mentioned, or the trend last week, would go through the number and cover Oakland. But again, not totally surprised by Oakland later in the week when everybody was investing in San Francisco, and that was a real Bay Area rivalry, and I knew Oakland would get up for that, and they did. Seattle, I don't know why I got off of Seattle later in the week. and wasn't as convinced about them other than the fact they had performed so well in the last 2 games. I thought maybe Philadelphia could upset because, to me, we picked Seattle all week, stuck with Seattle, wanted to stick with Seattle, and then I just let a little Philadelphia creep in, thinking that it would be sort of the same thing with Green Bay and New England, that Philly could just get some really big home calls this week, and then Seattle would thump them in the playoffs. But Seattle showed now that, again, they're the second best, if not the best team in the NFC with Green Bay, as we projected from basically early on in the season. The Patriots defeated the Chargers as we suspected that they would, and then just got done, as I noted, watching the Atlanta-Green Bay game, and actually started out, we were going to project that game to be Atlanta loses by 6 because of what's called a teaser and how the house wouldn't want to see too many people. And I know that sounds kind of wacky, but it's not. Numerically, I can be more official about it. But I figured Green Bay would win and Atlanta would keep that close, and that was our top play of the week, and that covered. Regrettably, they didn't win the first half, getting 7.5 points. But Green Bay, not surprising, came out with a lot of motivation and a foolish Matt Ryan turnover, which was just a terrible interception, cost them from covering the first half. But they covered the game, and that made us basically 4-1 on our top 5 plays, but could have been 5-0 easily, and should have been if we just replaced Baltimore and Pittsburgh, who we liked, with San Francisco. Everything, or actually would have been 5-1. So, okay, so let's go on to Week 15 here. We got about 3.5 minutes left, more than enough time. Arizona's playing St. Louis. Studied that game some. That's going to be a close game. I wouldn't go with either team. If I had to, I wouldn't. I mean, they both have a real good chance to cover that game. St. Louis has been playing well. It's a Thursday night game, so it should be a pretty close game. Oakland's playing Kansas City. I wouldn't be surprised if Oakland covers this game and actually upsets them straight up. I know it's a long shot for them to win 2 in a row like that, but these are their 2 biggest rivals, Kansas City and actually San Fran is like I said, is considered a rival. Again, wouldn't be surprised only for the reason of one of these top 2 double-digit favorites. Probably they're listed on the board that way. They both can't really cover as teasers. I think Baltimore can cover and will go through the number, or at least, cover by at least win that game by 4 or 5 points, so the teasers get screwed up for the public. But again, I would take Baltimore if I had to invest and think that might be the only double-digit favorite winner. Pittsburgh's playing Atlanta. I think Pittsburgh is the better team. I wouldn't really invest in that game, but if I had to, I'd take Pittsburgh. The number is live. I don't want to explain what that means now for the Texans against the Colts. So I think the Texans could cover that game. It might be one of those games where the Colts win by 4 and the Texans cover. Don't be surprised if the Texans win straight up, though. But again, I think they're more likely to cover. But again, not enough really to invest. The Browns are playing the Bengals. Already spoke about that game. Would invest in Cleveland. Even with Hoyer, I would invest in Cleveland. Cincinnati always been overrated to us this season. But again, if I know for sure 100% Manziel is going to be in there, I'm going to 100% invest on Cleveland. Miami's playing New England. That's a tough number. It's a little bit too big. I would lean toward investing in Miami if I had to invest in that game. Carolina, I think, will beat Tampa. Tampa might keep it close enough to cover. Wouldn't really invest in it. But again, Carolina is going to do enough to win that division. The Giants are playing the Redskins. This is, again, another live underdog number, 6.5. I wouldn't invest in either of those teams. Buffalo is playing Green Bay. This could be an upset. Buffalo, I think, could outplay Green Bay this game, and then Green Bay easily win the last 2. But Green Bay has to sort of stumble somewhere along the end of the last couple of games here, the regular season, but then, again, do so very well in the playoffs. But if they didn't stumble against Atlanta, well, they're going to stumble sometime. So Detroit's playing Minnesota. I think that's too many points. I would take Minnesota. Tennessee and the Jets wouldn't go near that game. San Diego, I think, is going to upset Denver straight up. They're getting points. This is going to be like their quote-unquote Super Bowl. They're alive in the playoffs. I think a reversal from the first time they played. I think Denver won the first game. Basically lost. San Diego lost because of turnovers, but I would definitely lean towards San Diego. Best play of the week this week, San Francisco. Straight up winner against Seattle, definitely with the points. Too many points. This will be the lowest game Seattle has until the rest of the season, and this will be San Francisco's Super Bowl for sure. Dallas is playing the Eagles. We definitely think the Eagles can win again, as we projected on Thanksgiving. And then New Orleans wraps it up on Monday night with the Bears. I think the Bears are going to, I told Coach, God bless him, love him, I think the Bears are really going to they're going to have a hard time finding motivation for this game, and I think New Orleans is going to win in a very high-scoring game. So, listen, that's it for this week. God bless us. Mark Anthony DeBello with NFL Moneyball.